Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, here with Mike Fruitman today. I had a tradition to talk to Mike at the end of the year, the beginning of the year. He's always a lot of fun. This is his first year to be under the Triple Cards umbrella with Lawrence. And we talked about that, but we also talked about barbecue, trying to get some sports card insights in there, but it's hard to contain Mike Fruitman. Thanks sponsors, of which Mike is one, and Rob Veers, whose name comes up as well. We had about an hour conversation. It's always interesting, but I edited to make it a little more manageable. Thanks, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs and Scout Auctions. As I said, Mike and Rob, the LCS sponsors, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So here's the first part of my conversation with Mike. This last year, has it been more or less than you expected being under the triple umbrella with Lawrence?
If you said, do you regret selling the store purely from a business standpoint, I would say things are better to the point where I'm very pleased with how the hobby is going. When I talked to Topps this year, there was a lot of interest as to why I had sold at the Topps event. And as I left the discussion, I said, please do me a favor. Please make me regret having sold the store. Because much like you just said regarding the competition, I want this industry to do well. It is important to me. I still have a lot of friends who are involved in this industry at all the different levels. I want this to be a strong industry. The fact that I regret selling is actually what I wanted to do. That's the answer I wanted to provide.
No, but why didn't you throw them under the bus? They're the ones that your question to them, wasn't it, that caused you to consider selling? Was that 2 years ago?
Oh, it was 2 years ago in Arizona.
I'm saying it. So they're asking you, why did you sell? I say, hey, rewind, play back what you answered me 2 years ago.
And maybe they weren't prepared for that question, but it didn't discourage me from my move. But fortunately, I partnered up with people who I would say allow me to still treat my collectors very well. They allow me to treat my staff very well. And I partnered up with, in retrospect, the person I wish I had.
Yeah, I was expecting that. You can't be disappointed you didn't sell at the peak. There's an ebb and flow in the industry, and it wasn't gambling. You made a financial decision that had other considerations. There's obvious upside of having your own thing, but there's downside too, and you weighed the options. But it does sound like you made a good choice of who to throw in with, that Lawrence knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
Getting these stores. When I was contemplating why you, other than your big personality and great location and all that stuff and loyal customers, my sense is that Lawrence's business is, like yours was when you told me, is heavily wax and unopened centric rather than singles and stuff like that. You told me at one point you were 80-20. And when I was doing first base back in ancient history, we were 20-80 unopened to singles.
Right.
And that's really hard to manage. So we had almost no wax theft, but we had all kinds of singles theft and pilferage. So it's way more difficult to do the accounting. So I think Lawrence, in you, he found somebody that was going to be great behind the counter and create a good culture there. And if it's mainly selling boxes, that's easier to inventory. So was that part of it, or is there more to it?
If something walks in the door and it's appropriate to buy, we buy it.
That's a separate issue.
It isn't appropriate to buy it.
Yeah, okay. That's a separate issue. That's also hard to manage, but that ought to be gravy. You've got to make it on selling. We did have a manager of the store that had a real propensity to buy and was just constantly buying and wasn't spending a lot of time sorting it and getting it back into the flow to sell. So where's the cash? I spent it on these collections, and we had to have him cool it a little bit or get a second signer on the checkbook, something like that.
Basically, the understanding is if I buy anything, it needs to be priced by tomorrow night.
Put out.
And displayed. And it's not that tough to do. And we're also not buying as many lower end collections. There's a focus on, and when I say higher end, and perhaps $20 as a baseline, but cards of those sort. And we still have sections for $2, $3, and $4, $5 that are set up by team or by sport. And those are still an active part of the store. If they told me to get rid of them, we would, but they have not. And it's still a valuable component. One of the things, a lot of people like going to card shows for those specific boxes.
Exactly.
So we like having, obviously, the feel and look of a traditional card shop, a very neat and tidy one, but we also want to have that card show feel. That's how they collect. We want to offer that to them as well. I've always lived a generally stress-free life, and working isn't stressful. I come here and I probably de-stress. I don't have the life issues that people have. I love my job.
You get paid to go to concerts. You get paid to go to big games.
Get paid to watch the Nuggets almost win last night. Wemby's good.
Wemby is good. But I went to the Mavs game last night, and Evan Mobley is like Wemby. He's got some range. He's got agility. And he's probably 3 inches shorter than Wemby, but he's still a little bit of a freak. But he's very slender, and he took out the.
Yep. You still don't have Luka back. He's out for a little bit longer, right?
We didn't have Luka or Kyrie or Najee
boy.
Marshall. So we were disadvantaged. We only lost by 12. There's no moral victories in basketball, as Joker would know. But you've got to have a star or two, and you got to have a good supporting cast. And this is giving the supporting cast a chance to shine. But Evan Mobley is a big part of the reason why the Cavs have come on so strong. But Wemby takes that to another level.
He does.
Even more, especially defensively.
You watch how he impacts shots. It's not just the rebounds and the blocks. It's the apprehension of that happening. And we haven't seen somebody like that since Yao, since Sean Bradley. But literally, he affects shots, people driving the lane differently. And you could tell there's that almost like a cringe when somebody sees him in front of him. They're like, dude, I got to get another way to the basket. This isn't going to work. We got him to 5 fouls, and we put in DeAndre. And I was like, man, just give the ball to DeAndre. Give them 4 shots to run up the middle. Eventually, they're going to, it's going to be 3 on DeAndre and 1 on Wemby. Finally,
exactly.
They didn't run it that way. I'm not paid to be the coach, and I'm not good enough to coach, but I would have liked to have seen him obviously get knocked out of the game.
I worry he could guard anybody because if they're fast, he can just lay off them so they can't get around him. And if they pull up to shoot, they're going to have to really change their trajectory. If you've got a flatlining shot, I don't know if you've watched Maxi Kleber play lately, but his shot never gets above 11 feet. It's a very flat shot. Wemby could block that at any point except inside the cylinder. But Wemby's a freak and a good freak and good for the hobby. And Evan Mobley flying under the radar, not a super high demand. He might be leading the Cavs to the best record ever. They're on pace for a spectacular season.
They came through town a few weeks ago, and the Nuggets finished in second place in that game too.
They looked well coached. They looked like they were on top of it defensively and a lot of motion and on offense. My seats are exactly where you stand, pretty much, of where I've seen you stand to the basket and off to the side and a few rows back. And so I really get to see the flow of the game. And with the Mavs, there's no flow. Without Luke, they're statues. They've got somebody trying to avoid 3 seconds, rotating around. And then you got 4 guys on the perimeter and waiting for somebody to, Luke at least has his guile and Kyrie, but without those guys, they had trouble.
What was the center you guys took last year?
They got Derek Lively was drafted, and then they traded for Gafford, and that's really helped. It's given them some defensive presence and the lob threat. So
you got to just talk basketball. Go deep with basketball.
I'm nervous about that because I think you could go a lot deeper than me.
You're dropping names.
I've had season tickets for 33 years in that same location, so I've been blessed to be close to the action. And I don't go to all the games anymore. That's 41 games a year. My wife looks at me and says, "I love basketball, but just tell me when the playoffs are here." You're adding to the adage that if you can't find it at the National, it doesn't exist. Now, that's actually not true, but some people say that because there's so many things there. But you're adding the additional condition that, yeah, you might find it, but the price might not be what you want to pay. And that's what the National, especially early on in the week, they want to get as much value as they can out of it. Yeah, it's there, but is it there at a price? It's a retail show. There is some dealer-to-dealer activity, but it's very specialized. I don't think they're looking to say, hey, I got a card shop, I want to take it back. But your MPJs, wouldn't they have gone up?
But I don't buy cards to sit on them.
But you would have been redeemed if you would have paid full, but not if that's your strategy to put them out immediately. That's another reason Lawrence would think that Mike is a good choice for me because he's more in love with the hobby than he is with cards. He's not in love with cards as much as he's in love with the hobby and the people in the right kind of way.
I got to diagnose that one. There's another one I'm working on. Veers once asked me if I work to live or live to work because I used to be open until 10 o'clock. And still when I have time, try to figure out, do I work to live or live to work? At that time, that was prior to the sale. And yes, you're correct. If I held on to them and bet on somebody who didn't play for a year with a bad back and only played, I think, 6 or 8 games in college, sitting on them would have been a good move. But
that's not your thing.
Not buying them at that time was my best move. I could have brought them back and put them out at 90, and I guess I would have been okay. But one of the things
but then you can't buy at 80 to put them out at 90. I'm just saying that unless you want to have a showcase where people say, oh, he's got that.
Sure.
But even then, he was dormant. Okay, here's one for you. And I wonder what your answer is going to be. I live to eat instead of eat to live. Wondering if you are in my camp or in my wife's camp and most what she thinks are normal people that eat in order to live.
I enjoy meals. I was just down in Austin for 3 days, and my wife asked me why we're going to Austin. My response was, I've always wanted to go to Austin. The theme of the place alone made it worth it. I had to visit the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue. I visited Terry Black's. I did the camp out at Franklin, and you got to get there at 8 or 8:15. Otherwise, they start running out of things when they open at 11, and you get your
So
spot.
you're a barbecue hoss.
I am. I also went to Cooper's, which I'll talk less about. Food is a way for me to get to sauce. So if I find a food group that allows me to get the sauce, that's where I want to be. I realized that I fell in like with barbecue. I wanted to go down there and I wanted to have barbecue as though I had never before. And all that I had in the past was ridiculously bad. I realized that barbecue is barbecue. A little bit more peppery here, a
No,
little bit more.
no. It's barbecue is not barbecue, depending on the rub and the sauce, which is very regional.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not the South Carolina guy. I'm not the mustard sauce. I want the solid barbecue sauce. But Terry Black's was my favorite because they had three sauces. They had hot, they had a sweet, and then their standard. So that really added to it. At Franklin, it was one sauce, and I liked it. And the meat was incredible. The brisket was spectacular, but I liked it. And I wanted to walk away and be like, honey, we're coming back every 3 months. And we're going to go visit the Stevie Ray Vaughan statue, take another boat ride, watch the bats, and eat barbecue. I'll go back, but next time I want to go, I want to eat Tex-Mex. Completely different.
Let's put this in the Sports Card Insights context. And that is that I can marry up my desire to have great food with card show travel, which I did back in the old days. And a lot of our guys did that. And you can do that too. You have done that. So you just got to find a great show in Austin that allows you to go down there and make it a business trip and chow down on the great barbecue they have there.
So my best experience was Franklin's. I would actually say Terry Black's had better food. But the reason I Franklin so much is I got there at 8 o'clock. I've never camped out for food any time in my life. You get there at 8 o'clock, and I sat down, and there's this group, and they were at a picnic table, and it was a couple and another guy. They were not related. We sat there, and we had a 2.5 hour discussion about the same thing. Each of them had gone to different places in the last couple of days as I had, so we were conversing about a similar thing. To me, the experience at Franklin was as good, if not better, than the food. I found strangers. We ordered our food, and my wife joined me. And the guy who was the single, he had his 3 people joined him anyway. He was at a table for 6. He's like, why don't you join us? And that's what made the meal impressive to me, is the fact that I was able to, over that time, develop a friendship with somebody and then join him at his table and enjoy. We could work off each other and see what we liked about it and not. So to me, the experience at Franklin was as good, if not better, than the food at Franklin. No disrespect to Franklin. It's incredible, and it has a life for a reason.
Okay, but no disrespect to my listeners. The connection to cards and Sports Card Insights did the topic of what you do, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, ever come up at Franklin's or Terry Black's or anywhere? Or did they think you were a random disguised food critic for the New York Times?
It came up, and the gentleman from LA will be going hopefully to Burbank or Sports Source 2 to get a better understanding of the values of his cards. We talked about it. And yes, I was wearing an Eat, Sleep, Collect, Repeat shirt of mine. And yes, so what do you do? We talk more about concerts and sporting events, but definitely the sports card thing did come up, and it breaks down walls. The other guy was wearing a Minnesota hat. So we were quickly talking about that, and Kevin McHale stories and Anthony Wood stories. Yeah,
it's a great icebreaker. Food's a great icebreaker too, but it's hard to talk with your mouth full, and it's hard to go to great restaurants when you're at a show that begins at 10 in the morning and ends at 9 at night.
That's why when I get down there or I'm heading down there, I always try to give you advance notice.
Okay, I'm forewarned. There's some great places here, and they're really not that far away from the show to where you don't have to show up at 8 in the morning or still be eating at 11 o'clock at night.
My favorite down there, Dave took me over there, is the Hard 8.
Oh, not Hutchins?
Hutchins was great. And I enjoyed the meal with you, especially when Rob splashed himself with the barbecue sauce. But the Hard 8 is a little bit more of a drive away, and I get that. But
Okay.
I think the selection was a little bit more diverse. But Hutchins was great. The ribs are spectacular. I'd eat those every night.
I'm serious. I eat to live. I love great food. I tolerate regular food, but I really enjoy great food. And that doesn't have to be gourmet. There has to be something to it. Like you, I'm a sauce guy.